Hey everyone, welcome to Fed by Fire. I'm Christian, and today's episode is different because I'm going to share some personal stuff from the jump, and then we're going to be breaking down these cases just like we usually do. So, a year ago today, I was at my lowest point. But, today I can proudly say that I've been clean for 1 year. This is my sober birthday, so I want to share that and what it's been like and what I've learned and what I can share with you and what recovery really means to me and how, losing my mom when I got clean was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my life, but I faced it. But also, the most meaningful. A year ago, my days looked like this, completely different. So here we go. I was using between an 8 ball of ice and a quarter of ice and around 2 G's to a ball of Asian Fetty mix. Morning I was going to the methadone clinic and getting 200 milligrams of methadone, and that was just the start of the day. I weighed 140 pounds soaking wet. And I was running nonstop, thinking every day might be my last one, either on earth or my last day of freedom. So, then came December 18th. Me and my co defendant, a 71-year-old autogenophilic, we were caught wheeling two mopeds down the road that, I had took. And the cops let us go at first, but deep down I knew they were coming. I knew what was up, so I started slamming beers and taking dabs because I knew I was getting arrested, trying to just lose myself any way I could. But looking back, honestly, now I truly believe that the cops those days were angels in disguise because them coming for me, that was God showing up. That was the beginning of my rescue to get where I am now. And a year ago, my days looked completely different. It was not a good time. And, I went to jail and, my wife, she saw something in me and bonded me out. And I moved my life from where I lived a lot of my life in Blacksburg near Virginia Tech and moved up here to Roanoke and just started completely over. I don't, and in that time, I've lost my mom. I've got custody of my daughter and just so many good things. We went from having an apartment to having our own house, and it's so beautiful. But I'm somebody that got a unique opportunity, and not everybody has that chance. So I just want to tell you, no matter how far gone you think you are, even if it feels like you're going 150 miles an hour into a wall, it's not too late. And I know that sounds corny as fuck, but believe me, in 2023, I almost lost my arm from cellulitis. You guys can see that scar. And, my days look completely different now. We wake up with our daughter, take her to school, catch a little rest when we get back. Then, when we go to work at the warehouse we both work at after work, I come home and record new videos with y'all of Fed by Fire. So, life's simple, but it's full of love and purpose. And you know what? There's no comparing the peace to anything I felt back then. I'm so grateful. That constant panic of this could be my last day was excruciating, and it's gone now. So every morning feels like another chance to grow. And all the pictures my daughter draws me, I hang them up as a reminder. But the toughest thing I had to face since getting clean was I absolutely losing my mom. I lost her on November 10th. But doing it sober, feeling every bit of it, it was the hardest test yet. But, at least she got to see me do right, and I got to make her proud before she went, and that meant everything to me. And I didn't let her loss break me. I used it as momentum and motivation to remind me why I fight to stay clean every single day. And hopefully, maybe I can be an inspiration to someone out there. But I want to talk to you guys about what I've learned. If you're out there struggling, here's some tips that helped me along the way. If you're on opiates like I was, you know, look into treatment options like Sublocade or Brixadi. They were a amazing for me. They work. Next, move your environment. If you can, go stay with a family member or somewhere just out of your and out of your regular crew. You know, get a job, even if it's a small one. Work gives you a sense of purpose, a sense of worth in ways you've probably forgotten exist. And know this: people who really love you won't hand you a shovel, to dig yourself deeper. They'll pull you up. So keep that in mind, because I used to think I was somebody because of the work that I carried around in my bag, the people that I surrounded myself with. But, they were really just wolves in sheep's clothing, vultures waiting for the drugs, not caring about me. But today I look at my partner in the eyes and I see real love. And my daughter is a reminder. She looks at me with pride, not shame. And that's something that means more than anything I could ever have touched before. It's amazing, truly. So yeah, 1 year clean, the best year of my life, and I just wanted to reminisce it with y'all. I owe it all to God, my family, and all of you who've been walking the path with me. I hope my story helps you and help somebody out there, but believe they can turn it around, possibly. So, thanks for listening, and now for the juicy stuff. Let's break down these cases, boys. All right, we're going to break down some real federal cases, not just the headlines. This is stuff that came out this week, not just the mugshots, but we're going to talk about how the justice system actually moves when it decides that somebody is done poisoning a community. So, I'm coming to you like always. Together, we're going to talk about what's really going on, what's really happening in this country right now. So, tonight, we're not just doing one case, we're going to do three. So, three different men, different states, all tied together by the same thing, and that is ICE, guns, and a system that finally said, you're sitting down for a long time, buddy. All right. So we've got a 13-mile high-speed chase that crossed state lines in the process and ended with a crash into a semi-truck in Indiana. We got a man in North Carolina they called Big Shark Bad Boy, who stacked up 10 keys of shard and an arsenal of guns in Nash County. And we got a 50-year-old in West Memphis, Arkansas, a man with 7 prior drug felonies who finally hit the wall as a federal career offender. Ding, ding, ding. All right, 3 different paths, the same destination: federal prison. No parole, years of their lives gone, and let's be a message to all you out there. So let's start on the highway. We're going to go to segment 1 and talk about Mr. Maurice Williams and the 13-mile chase. So I want y'all to picture this. All right, LaPorte County, Indiana. Police, they try to pull over a car on the highway, and behind the wheel is a 30-year-old man named Maurice Williams. and he's from Milwaukee. So he's already wanted. He's already got warrants out. He's already wanted on a warrant out of another state. He knows if he stops, this could be it. This might be it for his freedom. This might be his last hurrah. So instead of braking, he hits the motherfucking gas. And when he starts, as traffic stops, it turns into a 13-mile high speed chase. So imagine that he runs north, crosses the state line into Michigan, then loops back into Indiana, and sirens are wailing behind him. The whole nine, they're telling him, "Sir, pull over." Cars on the road around him, innocent people, of course, who did not sign up to be part of this chase or his escape plan. So, officers are chasing him. They're in pursuit at highway speeds, calling in positions, following protocol, trying not to catch him, but to make sure that some random family doesn't end up a victim or get wiped out by a guy trying just to not go to jail. So that chase finally ends when Williams slams straight into the back of a semi tractor trailer. All right, let's talk about the front of his car was crushed like a beer can, airbags, glass, metal, everywhere crushed. But even then, he jumped out of the car and runs on foot. For a lot of people watching, that's the race, doing the dash. That's the part they don't understand. The panic that, once you're committed to running, you got to keep fucking running. Even when the car is dead, you just got to keep going. Because I mean, I've been there. But officers track him down on foot and they arrest him. They snatch him and grab him. And here's where the case shifts. So he goes from reckless driver, which he had a warrant, to serious federal time when he crossed state lines. So when they search his wrecked car, let's talk about what they find. They find a loaded handgun with a high capacity magazine. So 52 G's of blow, 50 G's of Fetty, 190 G's of ice. He was in for a party. So that's exactly not a personal stash. That's trafficking basically, A stimulant, a downer, a gun to protect it. He's fried, he's fucked. And he's already a felon. So by law, he can't touch a firearm or be within 1,000 yards of one, but there's a loaded one sitting right there in his console and it's backing up all that dope. So the Fetty alone is just a few milligrams they say can be lethal, and we talk about that all the time, how dangerous it is. You know, with what he had, it could have affected a lot of people depending on the purity and how it's cut. We see that on the channel all the time. And while all this in the car, he's out there crashing into semis, racing across state lines, turning other drivers into extras in his escape. You know, they didn't need that. So, when this hits federal court in South Bend, Maurice Williams ends up pleading guilty to, let's see what he got, y'all. Possession with intent to distribute 50 G's or more of a Schedule 3 substance containing ice and being a felon in possession of a firearm. The U.S. District Judge Crystal C. Briscoe sentenced him to 264 months in prison. Smoked his fucking boots. That's 22 years plus 4 years of supervised release. Hats off on that one, boy. No parole in the federal system. So when you hear 22 years, He's gonna do 5. Go home. This decade's gone. 3 strikes, you're out. Nah, but I'll pray for his family and I'll pray for him. The acting U.S. attorney in that case, M. Scott Proctor, basically said that he brought a full menu of drugs. You know, I could name them, but y'all, we already said what was in there. He brought it all into the district and risked everyone's lives on a high speed chase. I bet he's regretting that now. And that's something you have to sit with. You know, one person's panic can turn a whole highway into a crime, into a mess. So let's go to segment number 2. Now, that's one kind of case, guns, multiple drugs, a wild case, a big sentence, nothing out of the ordinary for what we see on Fed by Fire. But not every case has a big TV movie chase scene. Sometimes it's quieter and way, way bigger. So let's go to Nash County, North Carolina, y'all. Let's talk about segment 2. Big Shark Bad Boy. 10 keys, and he had them fucking blowers. In Nash County, a federal prosecutors just took down a man who was not moving, he was not moving crumbs. His legal name is Kenneth Orland Simmons Jr. So he's 36, but in the streets, he had got the nickname Big Shark Bad Boy. That's cute. On paper, though, the case starts in July of 2022 when a confidential informant buys more than 1 key of ice from Mr. Simmons in Nash County. So, 1 kilo. We're not talking about no small potatoes. At this point, that we're in the wholesale territory. So, see you later. That control buy opens up the door for more undercover work, more of, more surveillance, and eventually a federal search warrant hits the Nash County Sheriff's Office. And the Nash County Sheriff's Office, they team up with the DEA. They get a warrant for Simmons' home, and let's talk about what they find and what happens there. When they hit that residence, what they find is appalling. It's more than just, run of the mill dope. Inside, officer sees 10 keys of, that Walter White, that crystal, nearly 1,000 grams of bud. That's probably personal use. And a stolen Glock 40. And a Smith & Wesson 40 handgun. And he had an AR-15. And a 29-round magazine with 40 caliber rounds. And a 96-round drum. He was ready to go to war, boy. So let's talk about how they smoked him down there in the first in flight, North Carolina. 10 kilos of ice and enough ammo to keep a long gun running for a very long time. So this is not just a casual dealer. He was up there on the chain in the distribution network. And it was all backed up by, military style firepower. And all of this sitting in a home in a county where kids are catching school buses and, just trying to live like regular people and clocking in at regular jobs, all that good stuff. All the American dream corny shit. But U.S. Attorney Ellis Boyle said it straight that drug dealers flood communities with ice and arm themselves with guns to violently carry out their trade, and that Big Shark Bad Boy was a serious threat to public safety. The Sheriff Keystone talked about how the drugs tear apart families and their community, and how that danger spikes when traffickers arm themselves, obviously. So, what does the system do with the guy like Big Shark Bad Boy? In February 2024, Simmons pled guilty to selling more than 50 G's of ice, but the real weight, the 10 keys, he was found in his home, and the prior kilo sale all factor into his sentence. So let's see what happens here. This year, a federal judge sentenced him to 20 years in federal prison. Smoked him. 2 full decades gone for one choice, y'all. Again, no parole. He's serving the mass majority of that too, 85% in the federal system. So now here's the part that, really stings. Simmons had already had a record, including child related and sexual battery convictions. So this was a rough guy. So when prosecutors talked about his sentence and talked about him posing a serious threat, none of that looked good. So they aren't just talking about the ice, they're looking at his jacket, his pattern, and the violence and exploitation and drug trafficking, and they're all going to tie it into one, and the guns gone. So the message from that courtroom is clear. You stack all that together, you're not just a dealer, you're a trafficker. And to them, you're a public safety problem. So you get 2 decades. But I hope his people are writing him. I hope people's putting money on his books. I hope he's getting looked out for. I pray for him and his family. Now, let's pause for a second. Because these first two cases, Maurice Williams and Big Shark Bad Boy, are dramatic, but you've got a high speed chase across state lines, across the border, a crash into a semi, a trunk full of drugs, and then 10 keys of ice, stolen guns, the whole nine, AR 15s, drum mags, things that go pa 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 pa. But I want to show you a third type of federal case, one that doesn't come with a huge weight or flashy raids, but the history behind it turns a small bag into a big sentence, y'all. So that's where the career offender label comes in. So let's go to West Memphis, Arkansas, y'all. This is segment 3, Alrico Wiley, the career offender. So they say. In Little Rock, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Arkansas put out a press release this week about a man named Aurico Wiley. He's 50 years old. He's from West Memphis, Arkansas. And let's talk about what his headline was. His headline was the career offender from West Memphis. I'm sure it's big news around there. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for possession with intent to distribute ice. Nothing surprising there. So now, if you only saw the numbers, you might, shrug. It was only 27 grams and a few grams of fentanyl and some pills, no no big cartel story, but they still smoked him. He still ended up with 12 years, but that's not what the judge was looking at. I wanted to break this case down to show you how it started. In July 2023, neighbors and others started complaining that Wiley was selling ice out of his house, having a whole bunch of traffic in West Memphis, things out of the ordinary. And at that time, he was on active parole already. And because of that, He had a search waiver, which means they didn't have to get a warrant, which means, law enforcement didn't need any, all they needed was a reason to search his home pretty much. On July 27, 2023, a DEA special agent goes to that residence, uses that search authority, that fourth waiver. I got one too. And officers go inside and they find his small stash. In Wiley's bedroom, they find about 27 G's of ice. Nothing big, but that's a big sentence. And on the dresser, they find a bag with 2.5 grams of Fetty. So nothing big, but they also found 6.6 grams of Fetty tablets, so M30s. In the kitchen, they found scales. So I wanted to show this because this wasn't big, but it was still federal. It's still on their website. But the pattern before it, the distribution, the scales, none of that looked good. And after they arrest Wiley and they take him into custody, they take him down to the West Memphis Police Department. He, waived his Miranda rights, and he admits that he's been selling ice. He just self-snitched completely. But I mean, I guess he was caught. And on November 2nd, 2023, a federal grand jury indicted him on two counts, one for ice and one for Fetty. Arkansas don't play. And on April 2025, he pleads guilty to the ice count. So far, sounds like a pretty standard mid-level petty dealer. But, here's where everything changes for him, for his life, for where it's going. Wiley's record, he's had 7 prior felony convictions, and that's all going to follow him for, controlled substances, offenses that the record include 3 convictions for possession, which is nothing. I have 3 possessions with intent to deliver blow, and 1 for possession with intent to deliver bud, which ain't shit. 2 for sale or delivery of blow, and 1 for sale or delivery of bud. So yeah, guys, don't commit crimes in Arkansas, but that history qualifies him as a career offender. And under the federal sentencing guidelines, he strikes out. So, what does that mean in plain language? Let me tell y'all. It means your current case is a serious, serious drug or violent crime. And your past shows a repeated pattern of similar serious crimes. So, when you get hit as a career offender, see you later. Your guidelines range. They go way up. The same 27 grams that might get somebody with no record a year or two turns you into a decade or more. Once your life story is factored in, it could be life. But on December 16, 2025, Judge Lee P. Rudofsky sentenced Wiley to 144 months in federal prison. That's 12 years, plus 3 years of supervised release. Smoked him. And again, no parole in the federal system. He's doing all that, ladies and gentlemen. But he's gonna, pray for him, pray for his family. We don't do this to glamorize nothing, but when people say it was just an ounce of ice, they are missing the complete bigger picture. That's why I wanted to bring this case up. And the federal judge is not just sentencing the bag. He's sentencing you. He's sentencing the pattern. He's sentencing decades of dealing multiple chances on probation. So y'all keep that in mind when y'all are running it up. Parole, search waivers, and still doing the same damn thing in the same neighborhoods. Now, he's got him a permanent spot and a DOC number. We've got 3 men on the table. We talked about tonight Mr. Maurice Williams out of Milwaukee running from a warrant that turned into a 13-mile chase that ended in a crash into a semi truck where they found fatty ice in a blower. He got a 22-year sentence. Then we got Mr. Kenneth Big Shark Bad Boy Simmons out of Nash County, North Carolina. Kilo level deals, plus got caught with 10 keys of ice in his house, and bud and a stolen Glock, and as well as a AR-15 and drug mags. He ended up with a 22-year sentence. And then third, we had Mr. Alrico Wiley out of West Memphis. Complaints from something small from the community, from the neighbors, and a search waiver on his parole, and just a small ounce of ice, and a little bit of Fetty, and a couple blue M boxes, and a couple scales. With 7 prior drug convictions, they hit him out of the park and gave him 12 years, a sentence as a career offender. So, that was 3 different snapshots of the same war we're fighting every day here in America. And this is where your story and mine come in, because the system, it doesn't just wake up one day and say, we're going to give out double digits or, double digit sentences. These cases start with neighbors calling in tips, with simple traffic stops, with parole checks. They're all examples of that, with confidential informants and, communities saying we're tired and we're done with this type of activity. And you and I know people who grew up around this. I did, you did. Some of us were those people, and we have been. And we have to see ourselves in these stories, because we've seen how easy it is to say, I'll just move a little bit, I'll just carry one bag just one time, I'll just do one run. That cycle never ends, it never stops until something dramatic happens. But you see how those little choices end up playing out. You stack up priors like Mr. Wiley, and one more bag becomes a 12-year bid. So that's no laughing matter. You can turn a simple traffic stop into a high-speed chase like Mr. Williams, and suddenly, you're not just a dealer, you're a danger to everyone on the road with you, on the highway with you. And the judge sentences you exactly like it. So, you build a stash house like Mr. Simmons with 10 keys, probably big for his area, and enough guns to outfit a small unit. And the system treats you like a serious threat. They fucking fry you. And, you're not going to see the outside of a federal prison, out of a facility for decades. But, family, this has been a real one, and family, this is why Fed by Fire exists. It's not just to point fingers and say, look what they did, but to sit across the table with you and share these experiences with you as somebody who knows what it means to fight their own demons and fight their own battles, and just to try to get it all back, and still care about what's happening out there. You just got to realize you got to do it for you. And when you're tired after your shift, you turn on the news and all you see is another drug bust, another long sentence, but nobody slows it down to explain, like we're trying to do here, what a career offender actually is, and why a search waiver can be the ultimate demise that lets officers walk into a parolee's house, how a single high speed chase can add years on top of a drug case that was already going to be bad, why 10 kilos and AR-15s are treated differently than one bag and no prior record, and just how fast things can catch up with you. And that's what we do here. We take the cold legal language the best we can, and all the statute and guideline numbers, and we try to translate it into real life, real impact, almost like a story for you guys, because behind every press release, every headline, there's a highway full of drivers who made it home, and that made it home that night, a neighborhood where the kids can just feel a little bit safer with a little less traffic at 3 a.m. A block where people, might finally sit on their porch again like they used to without watching a parade of cars stopping in and out of one house. So, if this episode helped you see more than just a headline, then do a couple things for me. Please, please hit that fucking subscribe button, drop me a comment, and hit the like button. And tell me which case hit you the hardest. The high speed crash, the Kilo house with the AR 15s, or the career offender, because I'd love your feedback. And talk about how none of them could leave the game alone. And if you want, share this video with somebody who thinks it's just a little ice, that it's just one run, that it's just one hustle, and that they're slicker than that, because as you know, as you saw tonight in Indiana, North Carolina, and Arkansas, the feds don't see it as just one bag. So, I'm Christian. This has been a real one. This is Fed by Fire. Thank you for sitting here with me and, for supporting the channel. All my love, guys. See you next time.